This month's Centresteer podcast is sponsored by Commonwealth Classics. Commonwealth Classics is a direct importer of classic vehicles from Europe and South America and has a rotating collection of rare and unique Land Rovers. Their showroom is located in Virginia, just 45 minutes west of Washington, D.C. Visit www.cwclassics.com to view their inventory of classic vehicles and follow them on Instagram at Commonwealth_Classics. Thank you, Commonwealth Classics, for your continued support of the podcast.
The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners.
Welcome to the Centresteer Podcast, podcast number 108 for March 2022. Centresteer is a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners. I'm your host, John Costage. Joining me over Zoom, Harold and Morgan. Welcome.
Hey. So episode 108 is the end of our 9th year.
Impressive.
And that's Morgan. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you. Always good to be here.
And Dixon is supposed to be here, but of course, Dixon doing Dixon things. Last week, he sent us a picture this afternoon before we started recording. He was near a vintage World War II era aeroplane. So maybe he's, I don't know, stuck in a wing somewhere, maybe inside the cabin. I don't know.
The Sky Creeper got caught on some gear.
Maybe that's it. Hopefully, maybe he'll join mid-show. And if you hear some dog noises, that could be Morgan. You have a new dog, don't you?
I do, yeah. Just a couple of days into a rescue of a Tamascan, a 95-pound. They're basically a husky Malamute shepherd mix.
Wait a minute, so, husky Malamute shepherd?
Yeah,
that seems like a rather large dog.
Large dog with a large attitude.
Yes.
So it sounds like you've inherited someone else's problem.
Yeah, these breeds tend to quickly discover that invisible fences aren't really all that much of a deterrent. So
yeah. Rules are just a suggestion.
Yep.
Are they smart dogs? I take it.
Yes, quite smart and fairly determined and stubborn. So
I was going to say smart and willful, which is a dangerous combination.
Yep. He needed a home where somebody was used to having a dog that could not be off leash ever. So, yeah.
And what is the dog's name? We should welcome.
Oh yeah, Jasper.
Jasper. Welcome Jasper to the podcast.
And so far, no puddles. So I don't know if he's a Land Rover dog or not yet.
If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you for listening. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. We talk about Land Rovers, new heritage, capabilities, and the people who drive them. Including this month's guest is Bill Cooper. Bill's a lifelong enthusiast with an impressive fleet of Land Rovers. Bill will take us through his collection and preview the Barbara Toy tribute run that he will start in April of 2022. Extra thanks to all our Patreon supporters. We welcome your support. Visit our website to see how you can support the show. As a Patreon supporter, you can buy us a t-shirt or a sticker. You can even buy us some brown water. Thanks again to Bob for that. We debuted a special logo for our 100th episode designed by Retro 80, and we have a limited number of t-shirts and stickers available for purchase. If you put a deposit down on a shirt with Retro 80 and haven't received it yet, please contact us so we can get that corrected and get the shirt to you. This is your monthly reminder that 2023 is Land Rover's 75th anniversary year. We're inviting all Land Rover owners to the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix in July of 2023, especially Series and Defender owners. You now have 15 months to get your Rover ready.
Tick, 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 tick.
April is the actual anniversary month for Land Rover, and World Land Rover Day is April 30th every year, and that is the day that Land Rover debuted at the Amsterdam Motor Show in 1948.
And that episode of the podcast will also be our 10th anniversary.
Now let's get into the news. First up, Coventry Telegraph out of the UK talked to their automotive expert, Dr. Charles Tennant. He had worked for Land Rover at one point, was on one of the Tata boards. I don't think he was on the big one, but maybe I think it's a Tata technology board. Nice discussion with him about what, like the business scoping that had happened in the past with JLR, Jaguar, and also Land Rover. And then when they were both together, And then they asked the question of what the things look like in the future for JLR. If you want to read all of it, we'll have a link in the show notes to it. It's kind of interesting if that fascinates you. But otherwise, I'll pull out of just a couple things to mention here on the show. And this is talking about where things kind of came from. Charles Tennant says the problem for JLR was that fixed overheads have substantially increased along with headcount swelling to over 40,000 to run its expanding global manufacturing footprint with new manufacturing sites in India, Brazil, China, and Slovakia. The company had sized itself for sales of at least 1 million and then some, and recruiting thousands of extra engineers to fulfill the research and product development demand. But however hard they tried, they could not deliver higher profits from the increased growth and never really achieve the sort of scale that they were after. So that was leading up until Bolloré took over, which I think it's been like a year and a half now since he took over.
And that was due to pressure from some of the larger corporate parents that Rover used to have, BMW and Ford and such, right?
Yeah, correct. There was this drive to become a 1 million a year unit manufacturer, even though Land Rover itself was profitable, as we've talked about. And it seems this is what Charles Tennant says, that money was basically funneled back into Jag, which was failing pretty much. And even though Ford pumped a lot of money into Jaguar to get them into a good position, it's still over time, Jaguar wasn't doing as well as is evidenced by what Bolloré wants to do, which is turn Jaguar into the EV unit. Moving on about the future here, Charles Tennant says that this was a surprise in and of itself, as I expected Jaguar to buy in a ready-made electric vehicle platform to save time and money, but apparently that became impossible due to the compromises of design proportions and capabilities. The new Jaguars will be produced at much lower volumes from 2025 with higher profit margins as they take on Bentley and Porsche customers. Some would say taking Jaguar back to where it once set the pace as the purveyor of high-end vehicles for successful, discerning, high net worth customers.
Quality over quantity.
Yes. And I think also being desirable, right, Harold? They seem like the design and the drivability just didn't seem to be there.
I think they were trying to mass produce a cookie cutter of sorts, so a sporty cookie cutter, but the quality went away in terms of the high end finishes and the desirability of it. So yeah, kind of people didn't want it because it wasn't special enough.
Yeah, they asked him what kind of Jaguars can we expect to see going forward. He says it's easy to see large two-door coupe and sports cars with four-door Gran Turismo type cars in the future, although Jaguar SUVs have been ruled out as Land Rover's own the territory. We do not yet know where these new Jaguar electric cars will be built, other than they will not be at the Castle Bromwich plant, as that will be closed and be used for other company operations in the future. JLR will achieve scale from significant commonality of batteries, electric motors, software across Jaguar and Land Rover, who are also electrifying their own cars, albeit at a slower pace than Jaguar. And then what does the future look like for Land Rover? He says, for Land Rover, the future looks quite different at a slower pace, where the first battery electric vehicle will appear in 2024, probably the Road Rover, and just 60% of range will be all electric by 2030, 100% by 2035. It will use its own bespoke platform, the aluminum modular longitudinal architecture, MLA. The perennial issue for Land Rover, whose large SUVs have higher weight and drag, so need more energy to propel them, is how to electrify them with the long range expected by customers, because it is physically and economically challenging to package a large enough battery, which is why they are considering fuel cell electric vehicles, FCEV. We'll throw another acronym in there for you. And then they ask, what about the company as a whole? And Tennant says, one thing is apparent in that Jaguar and Land Rover will have become disentangled as a single entity in the future, meaning that either could be independent in each other, and should that be decided at some point, either closing Jaguar if the plan does not deliver, or selling it off. Over the next 5 years, Land Rover, with its Midas touch, will continue delivering high profitable SUVs from the three pillar brands of Range Rover Discovery and Defender, aiming for volumes of around 500,000 from 8 vehicle types as it progresses towards electrification, whilst Jaguar will aim for volumes of around 40,000 from 3 vehicles types. This is all way above the new break-even point of 400,000, so JLR should be profitable entity again. With Tata Motors going, commitment and investment should prevail once the current global automotive disruptors settle down to a new normal. So that's his view of the future of JLR. So I guess Jaguar's kind of on thin ice, it seems.
Nothing new there.
It does seem like they're going to get rid of the Jaguar SUV, though. That's at least what he thinks, but I don't know that we've had that confirmed, right?
I think it's about time.
I mean, my opinions have been very clear on record on that, and I think it's interesting not just that he's predicting it, but also he mentions in the same sentence that they're giving up the SUV because that really needs to be Land Rover's turf.
Next up, Land Rover Lr2 class action lawsuit dismissed here in the United States. A Land Rover Lr2 class action lawsuit has been dismissed after allegations the infotainment control modules failed to shut down, which drained the LR2 batteries. The Land Rover lawsuit alleges even shutting off the vehicle doesn't shut off the infotainment and control module. According to the plaintiffs, the LR2 battery will drain if the vehicle is parked overnight or for similar periods of non-use. The LR2 class action lawsuit says the automaker has known about the alleged electrical system defects since 2009, but refuses to properly repair the vehicles. The plaintiff references a technical service bulletin issued to dealers in 2011 about the vehicles that suffered from drained batteries under certain conditions. The bulletin talked about the infotainment control module not shutting down correctly once the ignition was shut off, but only if two conditions occurred. Any LR2 owners out there, something to be aware of.
Yeah, apparently it only happens if you're looking at the navigation map and on a phone call at the same time.
Next, JLR to mark James Bond anniversary with a special Defender Rally model. Three-time British rally champion and Bond stunt driver Mark Higgins will be competing in the North Wales leg of the Bowler Defender Challenge on March 26th. The competition sees performance-focused versions of the Land Rover Defender created by specialist manufacturer Bowler race over rally stages. Higgins will make his return to rallying with co-driver Claire Williams this weekend in North Wales. He has been at the wheel of 4 James Bond films, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die. The competition-ready Bond Defender is based on a current Defender 90, powered by the P300 Ingenium powertrain. It features a host of safety modifications, including a roll cage, enhanced cooling for the engine and transmission, a sport exhaust, and new rear roof spoiler.
Looks like they put plastic side windows in it, too.
It seemed to be, yeah, they didn't mention that in the article, but yeah, I think you're right. It seemed to be the case. And it's a one-off. They only made one of these.
And you can't get it here in the U.S.
I suspect it'll probably go to Gaydon maybe after it's done.
Well, hopefully. That'd be nice.
And then next, in the Ukraine conflict, JLR helps employees, families to flee. In a memo seen by BBC Radio, it said that 650 employees have family in Ukraine and have been contacted about support with evacuations. The memo adds that the first families were successfully moved to Slovakia at the weekend, and the company is working with Slovakian authorities to offer help such as employment, childcare, psychological support, and financial donations. It comes after JLR, owned by Tata, said it had paused delivery of cars to Russia due to trading challenges. The car maker, which has UK plants in Castle Bromwich and Solihull, sold 6,900 vehicles to Russia last year.
I wonder if you can get updates over the air to shut them off.
Probably not, because internet connections have been effectively cut off to Russia.
No, there you go. There you go. Is the company providing vehicles with help with the evacuation? I didn't see that in the article.
No, I've not seen that that's the case. Okay. I've not seen that.
Because it'd be cool if they could like whip up a little fleet of AA yellows with a marine blue roof on it.
Also, farmer donate Land Rover in 1,000-mile aid run to Ukraine. A Welsh farmer is preparing a 1,000-mile drive to Ukraine to deliver humanitarian aid and a vehicle to people caught in the conflict. Award-winning sheep and poultry producer has farms near Corwin in Denbighshire. He will make the journey with friends Rhys Jones and a 2004 Land Rover Discovery. The vehicle was purchased for £2,000 using his own money and intends to hand it over to a Ukrainian farmer as a gift. The Land Rover will also be pulling a trailer donated by a Wales-based manufacturer, and both vehicles will be packed with medical supplies. That's a substantial trailer too. They have in the photo there.
Yeah. I've seen those before. They're well put together.
Yeah, those are cool. And I certainly hope that it's a diesel, not a petrol.
Donating a disco too. Either way, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Next up, Cummins announces a $3.7 billion deal to buy Meritor. Cummins may be all about diesel engines, but the heads of the company know that they need to start looking into electric or electrified powertrains, which is why they want to buy Meritor. This company is over a century old and today a global supplier of commercial vehicle components with plenty of electrical powertrain experience. Cummins will pay $3.7 billion to take over Maritor and its almost 10,000 employees, with a product portfolio that includes commercial vehicle powertrains, mobility, braking, electric powertrains, among others. Cummins currently sells diesel engines with displacements between 2.8 and 95 liters for a wide variety of applications, not just automotive. It recently started launching its own electric powertrain solutions. The most recent we found being a fully electric solution for airport terminal tractors called the PowerDrive 8000.
I should point out at this point that $3.7 billion deal sounds like a big deal, but Cummins makes engines, makes a lot of them. Cummins sells $23 billion worth of engines every year. Every year.
Wow, 23
billion with a B.
Wow.
So 3.7 they found in the cushions of their couch.
95 liters. Like, what's that? What would you put a 95 liter engine in? Is that
a ship?
Yeah, presumably one of those big cruise ships that keeps, running aground and all sorts of things like that.
Next up, speaking of electric batteries, StoreDot, an Israeli-based electric vehicle battery startup, says it will deliver battery cells that will be able to achieve a charge of 100 miles of range in just 5 minutes. The company says that those battery cells will be ready for mass production in 2024, and that it will be able to manufacture cells that can achieve 100 miles of range in just 3 minutes by 2028. StoreDot claims it's firmly on track for its first milestone of 100 miles of range in 5 minutes of charge.
Wow. I'm thinking you could charge your battery and cook a pizza all in the same time. That's got to make a ton of heat.
And maybe they only support 3 charge cycles or something like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, you can charge a battery that fast, but what does it do to the lifespan?
Yeah.
So I think that's really where their engineering is going, is being able to beat on the battery that hard and not shorten its life.
Might there be a chemical composition of batteries that would be less affected by that if they've maybe found a different?
Actually, the new frontier currently is lithium iron phosphate.
Could that handle the pounding, so to speak?
Probably not.
Yeah, not quite to that
not reliably.
level.
That's some serious battery abuse there. So they've got to have some secret or some way to ramp it up or some way to dissipate the heat. Maybe they're just doing it by thermal management.
Yeah, you would have to have cooling and heat sinks the size of the battery pack to try to deal with that.
Or cryogenics. I'm interested to see this kind of stuff because that's one of the big impediments is how long does it take to recharge?
Well, maybe it could be a premium charge where if you need to get back on the road in 5 minutes, you do the premium charge and they would upsell you that. Otherwise you sit there for, 40 minutes or so while you charge at the normal rate.
Right. But when you advance the technology, everything else will follow up behind. So eventually all batteries will be faster to recharge.
The interesting flip side of that, though, is getting your charging infrastructure to support that much electricity as well.
I'm still waiting for the Mr. Fusion home energy reactor. It's going to solve all of our problems.
And this next story is wild. And I say wild because it involves West Virginia, and West Virginia's tagline is wild and wonderful.
It's wild, but not necessarily wonderful, this news.
Headline here is West Virginia bill aims to ban OTA updates and a lot more. That's OTAs over the air. So I'll read you some details here. The West Virginia Automotive Dealer Association wants OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, to get all the way off its back about, seemingly everything. The West Virginia Automotive Dealer Association confirmed to The Drive that it helped introduce HB 4560 to the state legislature, 32 pages and more than 14,000 words, outline what West Virginia dealers don't want manufacturers to be able to tell them to do. The bill seemingly covers every aspect of the OEM-dealer relationship, seeking to prevent OEMs from mandating costly facility upgrades more than the dealers want, to prevent OEMs from cutting allocations for reasons dealers aren't happy with, to prevent OEMs from auditing warranty work compensation more than 12 months after work was done, and making sure OEMs pay dealers for the cost of providing loaner vehicles at the dealer's regular rate, and so on. But one paragraph in the bill is a watershed provision OEMs do not want to set a precedent The West Virginia Automotive Dealer Association wants to eliminate over-the-air updates. Sorry, I'm laughing there. Seeing as how over-the-air updates are already the way business is done for every EV manufacturer and startup, how legacy automakers are remaking electric architectures and software platforms that can handle remote updates, and how even partially autonomous vehicles will require over-the-air updates, this is a big deal. The language also wants to eliminate manufacturers taking reservations for vehicles or offering demonstrations and test drives. Wow.
So any convenience of...
Did I say that was wild?
Convenience of owning or buying a vehicle they want to get rid of.
Well, I think what it is they're just trying to preserve their turf. That they've done things through the dealer network, and they don't want the manufacturer taking that away, and those over-the-air upgrades deprive them of revenue from doing these upgrades. And they want to make sure they're being compensated for the warranty work they do, and that it's not going to get taken away later in an audit. They want to make sure that the OEMs are paying them for providing loaners and not just making promises they don't keep and that sort of thing. So it's really just about the dealers just preserving their bottom line and holding tight to their turf. They want to keep doing things the way they've been doing it because it makes them money.
Some of this might be negotiation aspects too, where you ask for 7 things knowing you really only want 2 or 3.
Right.
So, and that way the first 2 don't seem as bad when, as I said, that's kind of wild.
It's bold. I'll give you that.
It's interesting that they, want to get rid of over-the-air updates so that they can draw people into their service stations or service centers. But most likely, those over-the-air updates are probably going to be mostly restricted to vehicles that are under warranty, which means they would be doing more service for the sort of cut rate, the like whatever low reimbursement rate they get from the actual manufacturer.
Yeah, but they are getting paid to do these things at the warranty rate, which if it's over the air, they're not getting that at all.
Yeah, true.
And service revenue is what drives the dealers these days.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess part of it is in IT. I've actually worked with a lot of, the other electronics tech industries where their service rates, like their reimbursement rates for stuff, are generally pretty low. You have to do a massive volume of repairs where, obviously vehicles, you're fairly limited to how many you can actually turn over in a particular period. So
right, but if they're
hopefully it's a little more profitable.
If they're getting reimbursed at a lower rate, and it's just to apply these flash updates, they don't need a high-end technician for that. They can get a monkey with a laptop to do this stuff.
That's true.
Well, over-the-air updates is exactly what it says, though. You don't need then a human being to be involved. It should just update overnight, which is what Tesla does right now. They push updates overnight, and things fix some things, and of course with software it could break something too. Which is part of the problems if you don't have these over-the-air updates and your vehicle's bricked on the side of the road and you need an update and then they're not allowed in West Virginia. Well, that's an interesting question. Would that affect someone driving through West Virginia? If you have a Pennsylvania registered vehicle, you're driving through West Virginia and it wants to do an over-the-air update, would that technically then be illegal?
I guess you'd want to make sure that your vehicle is up to date before you travel through West Virginia, just to be sure.
And cell services can be spotty off of I-79 if you get off of that road, that interstate.
I generally try to make sure all my maintenance is done before traveling through West Virginia, and it's not because I can't get service, because most places in West Virginia, you are so far away from any sort of civilization that you don't want stuff to go wrong.
And next up in the news, the 2023 Range Rover Sport Spied losing some camouflage. The Land Rover has been working on the new Range Rover Sport for more than 2 years. It's been testing prototypes of the performance SUV since the early weeks of 2020. And the changes that they indicate here in these spy shots, well, quote unquote spy shots, because one of them, I don't know if you noticed in the shots, the passenger waves at the camera.
That's a low profile.
Yes, the front fascia appears to be losing some of the camouflage compared to the previous prototypes that were spied. Yeah. It looks largely unchanged compared to the outgoing model, but under closer inspection, you'll probably see the new shape of headlights, redesigned bumper, and new shape of the air intakes. At the back, there's more disguise, but the two large oval exhaust outlets are easily seen in the diffuser. The new Range Rover probably gives a good idea to the rear fascia design, though we believe the taillights of the Range Rover Sport will be different. At least that's this prototype hints at seeing how the corners of the light clusters are extending into the rear three-quarter panels. The new Range Rover Sport will be based on the MLA Flex architecture, which already underpins the standard Range Rover. The new platform will allow for more electrification, will improve the vehicle's road behavior thanks to the increased stiffness.
I think we need to clarify here when the article says that the vehicle appears to be losing some camouflage. It is actually an updated version with less camouflage on it. It's not there are camouflage parts falling off of it. We should make that clear.
Good call, Harold. Good call. There it is. I'm just showing the guys the picture here of.
No, that's a left-hand drive vehicle. That's the passenger.
Next, the 2023 Defender 130 will add 130. We'll add 2 more seats. And these are just some new spy shots, except this time it was caught doing cold winter testing in Sweden, and it is expected to debut later this year. This article from Top Speed says that except for the extra length, the 130 will be identical to the 90 and 110 on both the interior and the exterior, and expect the new 130 to be launched by the end of 2022 with sales to begin in early 2023. Good place to do cold weather testing.
Oh, yeah, winter testing, absolutely.
And over in Japan, they're getting an exclusive edition of the new Defender, and it's called the URBANIGHT 2022. Although if you look at the word, it's either URBANIGHT or URBANIGHT. Land Rover has launched another special edition dubbed the URBANIGHT 2022, based on the 2022 iteration of the Defender, which offers the very latest specifications and interior upgrades. This spec version is exclusive to Japan, comes in Carpathian Gray or Silicon Silver. The extended black pack comes as standard, meaning you will get black badging, exterior trim, 22-inch rims, also in black alongside black brake calipers. And this can be applied to both the Defender 33-door and the Defender 5-door. Inside, you will find the upgrade tech pack that brings the larger touchscreen infotainment system, special grained wood trim that lines the central division between the driver and the front passenger.
Is it black wood trim?
They just say wood trim.
Because this truck appears to be black on black on black on black.
You are correct, sir.
Yep.
That's
throw in a little Sugiban woodwork and you're good.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Blackened wood.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is that specific Japanese version, Harold, because the that magnesium metal piece that goes through there that's in the glove box area, that's supposed to be wood. I think this looks like a standard.
Well, and it's left-hand drive, so it wouldn't be Japanese.
Good point. That too.
In this picture.
Right. Yeah.
And they're limiting this to Japan only and to just 200 units.
And for better or worse, it is not a K model.
No K-class Defenders. I would love to have a K-class Defender. That'd be cool.
Well, honestly, any Series 1 probably would qualify because I think they're limited to 65 horsepower or something like that.
It's 600 cc or less is the displacement.
Right, yeah.
For those not familiar, what's a K class?
Well, I forget. KEI is a Japanese word for something, but yeah, it's a very tiny vehicle. In the 80s, they called them micro cars.
Oh, those are the ones that are getting banned here in the U.S., right? They're getting registrations pulled.
Well, yeah, and because you couldn't port them and register them because I think even the 25-year rule, whatever. But I actually own a K-class pickup that was imported into this country in the 70s. So it's grandfathered in. It has a license plate on it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a little two-stroke twin. It screams like crazy and winds up to, I think, 60 miles an hour on little 10-inch tires.
Yeah.
So in 25 years, if you would like this here in the U.S., if you're in Canada, keep your eye open. You get 15 years. You got to wait for it.
If it's still running 25 years from now.
Yeah. Wasn't there a Honda? Didn't they do something with a rebadge, something with Land Rover? I forget what that was called.
The Crossroad.
That's it. It was a Disco. Wasn't Disco?
It was
1?
a D1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when Honda owned the company, they poached a few.
looks like 93 to 98.
Yeah, so in the heart of the D1 era.
And next is a video from Land Rover Owner International on how to fit an Exmoor Trim soft top to your ex-military Land Rover Series III. It's 6 minutes if you're in that situation and you want to get a sense of what to do before you replace your soft top. It's a great video, so we'll have a link to it in the show notes. And if you're a wannabe series truck owner, it's also something worth checking out to see what you have in store for yourself.
Yeah, I would think these instructions are also applicable to any of the civilian soft top versions.
Apparently, they had a reference to this in the April 2022 edition of Land Rover Owners International. So that is that video. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. And also in April 30th specifically is World Land Rover Day. The next podcast will come out for our April show will come out in that. So you, in anticipation of that, I did find that is a video on the history of Land Rover, and it was done around the time of the 50th anniversary. So back in the late 90s, this video it covers the history of Land Rover, then into the history of the Range Rover, into the early discos, and just touches on the Freelander.
Back when the P38 was the contemporary Range Rover.
So if it would probably be good Rover porn if you have that interest in Land Rover, want to get a sense of where things came from and history up until that point. It's 20 minutes. It'd be good club fodder, especially if you're going to be having your club gathering where you are on World Land Rover Day. It might be something good to screen. And if you're not familiar with history, even if you are familiar with the history, you've heard us, I think, talk on the podcast a month or two before. In 2023, of course, is Land Rover's 75th anniversary. And one of the efforts that's underway is to have a gathering in the East Coast, somewhere maybe even in the West Coast, in North America. There's discussions currently underway. It's probably the best way to explain that. And for the 50th, there was a gathering at Greek Peak. Is it Great Peak or Greek Peak? I think it's
Greek Peak.
Is Greek Peak up in New York for the 50th anniversary. There was a group put together called ANARC, which is the Association of North American Rover Clubs, and they want to bring that back and then help facilitate these gatherings that one will take place or maybe several will take place, maybe all in the same time. That's the current thinking, that it might be tough to get everybody in North America in one place together for such a gathering. So there may be multiple, and that would probably take place in June of 2023. One of the other possible ideas is to do something for World Land Rover Day next year, which would be April 30th of 2023. And that might also come under the ANARC umbrella. So just something to prepare you for. And finally, here in the news, I want to tell you about a new event coming up that we heard about that's taking place out in Massachusetts, Cape Cod. It is the part of the Vineyard series, and this is the Cape Cod series, and it is a gathering of New England coast Land Rover owners. And it's basically like a car show, just a gathering. It doesn't appear they go off-road, but they just kind of, have the general gathering of Land Rover folks. Bring your truck out. And I think they specifically are oriented towards heritage models, but I suspect they would be happy to see modern vehicles.
I imagine it's pretty tough to go off-road in Cape Cod. Once you venture off the road, you're in the water.
Oh, that could be cool. We've done that.
Yeah, and I think it used to be primed for like dune driving, but that's been they've got some serious erosion problems, so that's been stopped many years ago.
So this event will take place on Sunday, May 22nd, 2022 at Old King's Vintage 4x4 in Dennis, Massachusetts, specifically.
Dennis. You could just call me Dennis.
So that is the news for March 2022. And now on the Centresteer podcast, all the way from New Jersey, is Bill Cooper. Welcome, Bill Cooper.
Hello.
I've been looking forward to talking with you now for a while. Dixon has encouraged us to speak and get you on the podcast because you are taking a coast-to-coast trip in a Series 1.
Yeah, I never said I was smart. But.
So tell us about the trip. When's it start? Where does it start? And what's some of the details of it?
Well, the basic plan is we'll be starting towards the end of April, around the 18th or 19th. The basic idea grew out of trying to raise some awareness about Barbara Toy and some of her travels around the world. And that all started when Oxford started making his round the world trips and came here to the US for a while. And, we had custody for about a month or so. And, started thinking about some of the other people who had done Land Rover trips long before Oxford, some of which, to my mind, were a bit more impressive. Barbara Toy, being a single woman in the early 50s, driving around the world in a Land Rover, to me was a little more impressive than a fully sponsored trip by a bunch of young college kids. We decided we wanted to put some effort towards raising awareness about Barbara and some of her trips. And one thing led to another. And the idea of recreating her first North American or crossing of North America. And since I happen to have a little 1.6 liter 80-inch truck, pretty similar to her truck Pollyanna, it sort of grew from there.
And you are starting in April, and how long do you expect to take? And I know it's a leading question. I realize that.
It is.
What kind of roads are you taking, though? Are you going to be taking interstates, or are you taking kind of like the?
No, it's all secondary roads. We anticipate there will probably be points where we just can't avoid a short stretch on an interstate, and we're just going to have to hang to the right and do our best.
You're going to have somebody running block for you in another vehicle?
Yeah, we've got, there's people that have asked about joining up at various points, and there's at least one, possibly two people that we're going to attempt to try and do the whole run with us. I'm thinking there may be 3 vehicles.
I'm just thinking something bigger to keep the traffic off your tail when you're on the interstate.
I've been playing with the truck, and let's finish the other thought at first. But the plan is to stay on secondary highways and back roads most of the way. I've actually got a map collection, and I pulled out all of my early 1950s road maps of the U.S. and I was using those to try and figure out what roads existed when she was trying to get from Mobile to New Orleans to Lubbock and then just try to match and figure, okay, most likely she used this, and where they still exist and haven't been turned into interstates, we're going to try and use those.
Cool.
So we should be able to keep to 50, 55 mile an hour roads where we're really not a huge traffic impediment.
Yeah.
But perhaps not keeping to 55 miles an hour on those 55 mile an hour roads.
Well, as best we can.
Okay. It's ambitious in a 1.6.
Well, I was running some, but that's a whole story in itself, the rebuilding of this truck. But I was doing some tweaking and adjustment yesterday, and we were comfortably, it was a 50 mile an hour road, so I wasn't pushing it, but I was holding 53 without too much trouble.
Good for you. That's impressive.
Unloaded.
That's unloaded. That is correct. Yeah. And it was a relatively flat stretch. The minute you introduce an uphill, all bets are off.
What route did Barbara originally take in the U.S., and how close are you keeping to that route? Like what city, city to city or state to state kind of situation?
Yeah, she didn't leave a lot of information on that, unfortunately. I have her, she actually did write a book about this particular round the world drive. The book was called Columbus is Right. As with most of her books, they can be a little hard to find. There's only 2 that are sort of in print at the moment. She left a very rough map. I know this is a podcast, but I'm going to hold up there we go. That's the map she left.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
It's just basically a dotted line. And in the book,
just to be clear for those who can't see it, of course, it's from Florida on the southern United States all the way out to California.
Well, no, she actually went San Francisco to New York.
Okay.
But she took the southern route because she was doing it in November and December of 1958. She couldn't actually cross the Rockies. She's in a 1.6 liter 80-inch truck with no heat. November is not a time to be trying to cross the Rockies in Colorado and whatever. Yeah. And there were some storms coming up, so it kept pushing her south. So she basically did the southern tier to try and avoid that. So she went San Francisco, through Las Vegas, hit the Grand Canyon, drove across Texas, stopped in New Orleans, went to Jacksonville, got permission to drive on the beach so she could stick a tire in the water, and then ran up the East Coast to New York. It took her about 2 months to do it. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time. Work is just not going to allow that. So I am hoping to try to get this done in like 3 3.5 weeks. We figured out if we do about 200 miles a day, allowing for some stoppages and whatnot, we should be able to do that.
Are you doing any sightseeing along the way? Is this a camping trip, hotels?
A little bit of both. We're going to mix it. You know, it's kind of funny. She, in the book, she dedicated a fair amount to the western side of the trip. You know, a fair amount of detail about the trip through California and across the desert. Then she started skipping forward as she went across the southern states. And then it was like 2 lines where she went from Jacksonville to New York. It was just I drove up to New York. So it's like, we have no clue where she went.
As
so
one
it's
does.
it's kind of open. You know, we're just going to sort of make our way. And
Right.
the real focus will be on trying to recreate as many of the stops she actually hit on the western side, because I have a lot more information about that.
So you're going to go from New York out west, then
We'll
kind of
reverse it. Yeah, she did it west to east. We're going to do it because of logistics. We're going to do it east to west.
So, and you're going to drop down from New York, New Jersey down to Florida and then take the southern line, just so people understand
Correct.
where they can hook up with you on the way.
Yeah, and I think the plan is I'm going to go throw a Facebook page up.
Okay.
Probably call it Barbara Toy Tribute Tour or something like that. And I'll throw it out on my social media. I'll send you a copy. And the plan is I'll publish the intended route and the intended time schedule. And there's going to be a big caveat that it's a 70-year-old truck. I will have spares with me, but it's a 70-year-old truck. And who knows? This is where we think we'll be.
Right.
But all bets are off. More than like 24 hours out. No promises.
Now, there's certainly community, especially a Land Rover community in the southern part of the U.S. And I think you'll get people along the way to be able to help you or want to come out and see you. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're actively encouraging. I would love for folks to, come tag along with us for 50 miles, for 100 miles.
Right.
Come be a part of it. So we're actively encouraging folks. And I have had people pretty much across the country say, "Ooh, we'd like to join up for this." It's like, absolutely. This is the rough plan. Come on along.
Folks are encouraged to join up with you, tag along on the journey, and provide
or just
cover.
Meet us somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Whatever.
Do you like meeting up at breweries or distilleries? Is that in the cards?
I'm not opposed to it.
Just want to be clear, just in case as you're traveling.
Well, another possibility is to meet up at auto parts stores.
Certainly to pick up more oil.
Where in California do you intend to end up?
Well, we're going to run the Pacific coast, along the coast. So we will hit Los Angeles and then going to run up the coast to San Francisco. And actually for our trip, it's not actually ending there. We're going to continue on up. I promised Ike we were going to come up to his place up in Eugene, Oregon. So we're actually going to add several hundred miles to her drive. I talked to Ike. He's actually going to, because this trip's going to take 3.5, 4 weeks. He's actually going to hold on to the truck for me. I'm going to fly back so I can go back to work. He's going to hold on to the truck for me for a while. And then what we toyed with doing was flying back out in the fall and then coming back across the northern tier of the country.
Oh.
Ooh.
And that way we will have sort of circumnavigated the continental U.S. Sadly, I don't have the time that some of these folks did in the 50s to just, go take 2 months and go.
Right. Just meander across the country.
Exactly.
So this is a legit Barbara Toy tribute run then across the U.S. using a similar vehicle in similar kit. That sounds very exciting. You have to keep us apprised.
Yeah, and part of it, like I said, was to try and make a few more people aware of, what this lady, and there were others,
True.
There were a lot of people exploring the world in Land Rovers in the 50s that don't get quite the attention that Oxford did. I mean, nothing against what the guys did with Oxford.
They contacted the BBC and were able to get film and video, and that.
Absolutely, and kudos to them for doing it.
Yes,
and they did a great thing for the brand. I think they got more brand recognition than any of the independents did.
But, to my mind, this single Australian lady who just decided, well, I'm just going to drive in places that nobody has. And she went out and with her own money bought an 80-inch Land Rover and just started driving and had a habit of not taking no for an answer.
Yeah, I think that part's more impressive than the vehicle she used, just the fact that she was the one doing it by herself.
Yeah, and really with little to no support. She just arranged everything herself. Yeah, and I realize we face a couple of extra challenges. The world, the roads, the vehicles today are not what they were in the 50s. When she did these drives, Pollyanna, her 80-inch, was only a year or two old when she started. when she was doing her later trips. It was only a few years old. It was not that far below a lot of the vehicles that were on the road in the 50s, and the roads in the 50s were way less crowded.
Right.
Standard speeds weren't much more than 45, 55 because the roads you didn't have interstates. We're doing this in a 70-year-old truck whose performance is way below an average modern car. So we have some extra considerations to think about.
So folks can follow, you're going to set up a Facebook page. Folks can follow what you're going to be doing for that. So that'll be public for those who don't have a Facebook. Yeah. Any chance you'll be also going on Instagram? Seems like everybody likes the Instagram.
I tend to post most of my stuff through Instagram and have it go over to the Facebook, but Facebook we'll be using for trying to arrange to the meetups and, hey, this is where we're planning to be.
Right.
But we'll be documenting most of it through the Instagram.
All right. I'll have a link, of course, to your Instagram account in the show notes. But speaking of the truck that you are using, so tell us about that. You said it had a rebuild. How did you obtain it, and what work did you do to it?
This is let's see. I picked
all stories start with that kind of sigh. Well,
pretty much all of my trucks start with a sigh, one way or another. I very rarely go out actively searching for a specific Land Rover or I want one of these. It's usually a case of something happens. I get a call. Hey, I've got this truck. I don't know what to do with it. Or I got partway through this project and I needed to go to somebody who can finish it.
Yeah,
this one, I hadn't planned on buying this particular 80-inch. I already had another 80-inch, which I still have. It just came up and the condition was pretty good and the price was reasonable. And okay, sure, why not? And then once I got it, it was, okay, well, the glance and the test drive, it wasn't quite as good as I first thought. So it required a lot of rebuilds. All of that was let's drive it across the country. This was a pretty stock, solid, most all there 80-inch truck. And I was just going to keep it as such. And then when I started thinking seriously about taking it for a long drive and digging into more and more components and finding out, this wasn't quite put together properly, or, look, these are supposed to have lock washers on them. Look, these are supposed to have cotter pins in them. Oh dear. So there's been a lot of that over the last several months, making sure it's up to a cross-country drive. And I think I've got a leaking pinion seal. I think shy of that, it's about ready.
So it's what year is it?
It's a 1951, what they call lights through the grill. It was a North American truck. It was originally sold in Roots, Los Angeles, back in the 50s. I don't know its history from there to a fellow in Colorado wound up with it, who I don't know.
So it's left-hand drive then, huh?
It is a left-hand drive North American spec truck.
That's different.
Both of the 80-inch trucks I've got were both NADA trucks, although the other one is a much stranger story. Dixon's familiar with that one. That's the steel wing truck.
It's proving to be an interesting one to go and track down because it's not the only steel winged vehicle that's over here.
Is this wait, just to be clear, is this the one you're using for the trip or is this the other series one?
This is the other 80-inch truck.
Okay.
Sorry, we digress slightly here.
There's a few others around. Land Rover has no record of actually ever producing any steel body panels.
Right. But
they can neither confirm nor deny.
But they were bolted on at the factory?
Well, we don't know.
Okay.
But they are inch perfect wings. When you see them, I mean, they bolt in place perfectly. They are perfectly formed. They are...
So probably stamped from the original...
If they weren't done at the factory, then whoever did it was an excellent metal worker.
I wonder if some dealership here may have done something. Maybe they arrived and the wings weren't there and they had to maybe make them their own.
Yeah, I don't really know. We sadly, unfortunately, we don't know the history of that particular truck. But Dixon, fairly recently, I'd seen an article where he talked about survivors and what folks did to keep old Land Rovers running here in North America when especially Series 1 parts availability is not what it is today. And you didn't have the internet. When I picked this other truck up, let's see, it had a Packard brake master cylinder in it. It had a hybrid Dodge Dodge Land Rover drum brake setup, Volkswagen turn signals. Trying to remember what else was in there. A Ford generator. I mean, it had 5 tail lights. Whenever one broke, somebody ran a fresh wire down the truck and I screwed another tail light to the back. So
it was a world car.
Absolutely.
So the truck that you're using to take on the Barbara Toy run, it's a Series 1, 1951. It's a North American spec or vehicle, left-hand drive. How many miles on the engine? Is the engine original? Have you made any modifications for the modern world to just for your safety and maybe comfort?
The engine is not the original. That's one of the things that makes this feasible. Is it actually the fellow in Colorado actually dropped in a rebuilt Cox and Turner 1.6. So the engine itself is actually in fairly good shape. Some of the assembly was perhaps not flawless, but as far as the rest of the truck is concerned, but we've been slowly working through all of that and getting it ready to go. And as I said, I was doing some bench tests yesterday and comfortably holding 53. And I'm fairly comfortable. There's still more there. We could have done 55 without too much trouble. As far as safety modernizations, for the purposes of the trip, I did switch it over to be negative ground so that I could run LED headlights easily. Again, just to want to make sure that we're not planning on doing a whole lot of night driving, but if we are, I want people to see us and know that we're there and not come plowing into the back of us or whatever. So
you're doing LED lights all around.
I'm going to see if I can find time between now and then. I now have it said I want to see about just throwing LED lights in the tail lights as well, so that we're visible from the rear.
Right.
It's easily reversed if I want to put it back when we get back here.
You think maybe with the low current draw of the LEDs that the generator might be able to keep up?
Yeah, that's another advantage and I've already run around at night. It's like, oh, look, you can run headlights and wipers. So,
whoa, that's deluxe.
You get to use more than one thing at once.
Yeah, because there is such a drastic power draw difference between an LED and an incandescent headlight.
Right. And you're only playing with 15 amps of generator capacity. So,
well, it's not a big generator. I also did throw a little, again, it's easily removed. There's a little panel for USB power, so I can keep, a little phone or whatever just plugged in and going as necessary.
Are you taking like a separate GPS unit or using your phone?
Yeah, I've got a little Garmin GPS unit to just keep track of miles per hour, because the odometer appears to track okay, but the speedometer is variable in its opinion.
Between 0 and 60. Yes.
Well, yeah, generally between 0 and 20. Even when you're doing 50, it still thinks you're doing about 30, 31. So I really didn't want to count on that.
Well, the fine print on that speedometer says for entertainment purposes only.
Very much. It's, as I said, it has varying opinion of what speed you're doing.
Honestly, I don't think you have to worry about speeding.
No, not really.
Yeah, even in a school zone, I don't think you have to worry about speeding.
Oh, the only other thing we did was I did throw an overdrive on, just as, because we're going to be doing some long stretches and just keep from beating up the 1.6 too much. I'm not really expecting more speed out of it. It's really just try to rein in the RPMs.
Are you the lone person in the vehicle or someone going with you?
We're sort of working that out at the moment.
Okay.
The general plan is
I wonder if it's the royal we or...
well, not so much. No, my wife was thinking about coming along for at least part, if not all, of the drive.
It is him plus the truck. That makes a we.
So we're kind of working that out. She also has thought occasionally about, well, in honor of Barbara Toy, she's got her LR4 that she's insanely fond of. She might want to do the drive by herself in her truck. So we're just sort of sorting that out.
That would be nice to have be your cover car. And
in the back of my mind was that thought of, it wouldn't hurt to have a relatively modern vehicle tagging along. Again, it's a 70-year-old truck. Who knows?
Right. And again, to run block on the interstate.
Yeah. Figure worse that happened, something horrendous, catastrophically fails, and we've got a 4 there. Hey, we can always go run out to a U-Haul dealer, pick up a trailer, and get ourselves out of wherever we happen to be.
Right.
What equipment are you taking with you? Do you plan to camp? Are you going to be cooking on your own?
We're going to be doing a little of both. When she did her trips, she usually had her sleeping bag, occasionally had a tent, and she had her little stove for brewing teas and cooking food, but she mostly, especially crossing North America when she was in Australia, she was going hotel to hotel. We're going to be doing a bit of the same, although we do have plans to camp, especially out west. We want to do some desert camping and out there. East Coast, not worried about it so much. It'll probably just find a hotel. And
Have you named your Series 1?
it has an informal name of Susie at the moment.
And is there a background to that we should ask about or not?
Well, you certainly can. I actually acquired the truck from Steve Hoare, whose wife's name is Susie, and we were giving him a hard time about why he never named any of his trucks after his wife. So we jokingly said, well, we told Susie that we were going to name our truck after her because her husband couldn't be bothered. So just to give Steve a hard time.
That's good. And it kind of fits with Pollyanna and Susie kind of in the same.
And it's sort of stuck. So
Yes.
it still gets referred to as Susie. So it may have just acquired the name Susie.
So, Bill, you're taking your trip. If folks can follow it on Instagram, and you're certainly encouraged as Bill is traveling through, especially the southern United States, to follow along with him. Hope people do, and we want to see people go out and meet you, travel with you, and buy you beer. I think that's a great idea. There we go. We encourage our listeners to buy you beer wherever they go.
I certainly won't discourage it, but we do actively. We would love it if folks would come out and say hi and come be a part of this, for even just for a short stretch.
And if they're not comfortable with buying you beer, they can always buy you a quart of oil.
Gifts of oil will not go amiss. Even a well-sorted Series 1 oil just seems to go away somewhere. We're not always sure where it goes, but it's no longer in the component it started in.
What spares are you taking with you?
Well, obviously, we're going to have some fluids with us at the very minimum, but I've also got full sets of ignition parts. There'll be points, condensers, rotors. Oh, Dixon, I have your rotor you can have back. We got ignition parts with us. I've got a full set of gaskets with us, oil seals. I've got valve cover gaskets. There's 2 on a side valve engine. I've got a spare head gasket that I'll have with me I have changed head gaskets in driveways in the side of the road before. It's not my first choice, but done it. It's fine.
Well, if you have to, you have to, right?
Absolutely.
What kind of tires are you running on Susie?
That's interesting. I actually had bias plies on there. Again, I had it as a stock 80-inch truck. I had bias plies on there. And I hadn't realized what a difference a radial tire versus a bias ply. I've had bias plies tires on trucks. I've had radial tires on trucks. I've never had a truck where I actually swapped to really feel the difference. And I was shocked at I knew the ride was going to be a little bit smoother, but the performance of the lower rolling resistance of a radial tire, I actually picked up about 5 miles an hour by throwing a set of metric sized radial tires on. You're only dealing with 40, 45 horsepower on a good day. Every little bit helps.
Now, were those identical diameter or some of that?
Yeah, same diameter. I had 650 by 16 bias plies on it. And I went to, a 205/85, which is basically the same diameter. They're ever so slightly
similar.
wider, but it's a very similar radius. And the truck drives infinitely better. So for the purposes of this drive, we're going to run it on the radials. So also, if nothing else, in wet, rainy weather, the radial tire is far better behaved on a wet road than a bias ply, stiff, solid tire.
Well, the radial is more forgiving too.
Yeah.
It's the bias ply has a grip to a point, and then it's got nothing. Whereas the radial, you'll feel it start to go.
Well, and you'll feel on a bias, especially when the road starts getting a little slick. If you've ever driven NDTs on tarmac, they get a little skittish when they start to hop and bounce a little bit.
Yeah.
So whereas radials just don't tend to do that. It's another one of the, for safety's sake, we decided for what's going to wind up being about a 5,000-mile drive, let's run the radials.
Probably a smart move in this case.
Well, you're putting modern gasoline and modern oil in it, so why not use modern tires for your other consumable?
Well, there's that argument that, if they'd existed in 1952, she'd have used them. So,
Of course.
Well, and also it's not 1952 anymore either. And so
No, it's not.
all the things around you, the environment is not 1952. You've got 53-foot tractor trailers moving at 80 miles an hour down a road.
Yeah, and that's just on the local roads. So.
Yeah.
So Susie's not your first Land Rover. What was?
My first Land Rover was a 1966 Series 2A 88, which I still have.
Nice. Does it have a name?
No, it's just the 66. Again, I've had it for 35 years now, 36 years now. I think I got it in 84. So somebody do math.
38 years.
Pushing 40 years, yeah.
I'd always been fond of Land Rovers, but in, my teen years, early 20s, even then, series Land Rovers tended to be a little more expensive than, a Jeep or whatever. Actually, ironically, when I first started off-roading, and most of my friends could afford Dodge pickups and Jeeps, I didn't have that money. So I had a $600 Dodge one-wheel drive car that I learned to off-road in.
One-wheel drive.
So, you sort of learn the art of off-road driving because you've only got one-wheel drive and no ground clearance. So you learn about picking lines and being careful where you put your tires. But in any case, I'd always had an interest in Land Rovers. It's, I grew up in that generation of, you watched Wild Kingdom on television. Our family had a National Geographic subscription. So that's what you grew up, lots of people had Jeeps and Broncos as, play toys, and they'd go through mud bogs, whatever. But it always seemed that the guys that were traveling around the world or, driving across Africa or doing things, they always seemed to be in Land Rovers. I had an interest in one, and finally in, like I said, 84, this one came up for sale. I had the money and it was like, all right, we're going to do it.
And you were living in New Jersey at the time?
I was living in New Jersey at the time. Yeah.
And the car originally had been a New Jersey vehicle?
It was up in New York. Actually, Dick Taylor from Atlantic British. It was his car. So I bought it from Dick, and I've had it ever since. It's on its second engine, second chassis. It's rolled the odometer at least once. I lose track because it doesn't always work. But, it's been out to Colorado a few times. It's been up and down the East Coast. It's been up to Canada. That's one of the things where I'm not completely concerned about just driving a series truck across the country. I've put 150,000 miles on a series truck. It's no big deal.
Right.
Done that before. So there have been large stretches of my life where it was my only car.
So it was your daily for a period of time?
Several periods of time where other cars I've had have come and gone. That one has just always been there. And it will probably be the last car I ever get rid of when I'm 103. And
Nice. Do you plan to be buried in it, if that's not too morbid?
No, because, it's a Land Rover. It'll still be running. Somebody else can take care of it then.
Oh, there we go. That's a good way to do that. And so that was the first bite of the apple, I take it.
That was the first, yeah.
And what was the next Land Rover after that?
The next Land Rover was probably I've got a 1955 86 inch. That was the second one. I think after that I picked up a Range Rover, and then it's just started snowballing. As I said, I've never actively sought out, I want to find a 109. It's just they seem to
found you
show up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once you get known as that guy with those Land Rovers, they just seem to swarm on you.
And that seems to be what happens. I'll get a call from somebody. Well, I need to get rid of my 109, and I want it to go someone who's going to, actually take care of it or whatever. And yeah, okay. I think at the moment we're at 18 Rovers.
Oh wow, you have 18, and how many are functional?
One.
Well,
that's about right, Harold.
At any given time, there's always one.
Everything, actually, okay, all but one are, drivable at the moment.
That's really
there's
good.
a Range Rover that desperately, it needs the rear cross member replaced and the gas tank's leaking. So it's just kind of waiting to get that done.
But theoretically still drivable?
Oh yeah, engine starts. I mean, it starts and runs. It's just, you're going to be leaving a trail of gasoline if you try to do that. The rear cross member disappeared.
Breadcrumbs.
So can you run through the list of all 18?
From memory?
Yes, just make and model and year, because then after that, we'll go through and pick out the ones we want to talk about.
Do they have to be in reverse order?
Well, no, we'll probably, let's see if we can go in ascending order here. There's the two 1951 80-inch trucks. There's the 55 86-inch truck. There's a 56 80-inch truck, or 86-inch truck, sorry. That one's a little bit of a rest of mod. There's a 57 107 station wagon. There's a 58 88-inch Series 1. There's a 62 or 63 109. There's the 66 2A. There's a 67 2B forward control. There's the 68 Pink Panther.
We'll come back to that.
Hope I'm trying to think. Did I skip over anything over there? Run through the garage. No, I think we got all of those. Let's see. There's a 73, 74, it's 73 Series 3. That's the token Series 3. There's an 84 110. There's a 97 NAS 90-inch. Let's see, the discos. There's a 91 3-door 200 TDI disco D1. There's a 97 D1. There's a 2002 D2 that my daughter likes to drive. There's the LR4. It's a 2011. There's a modern 2020, whatever it is, Defender 110. Why do I feel like I've skipped something here? Do a quick count. Do we have? Oh, there's a 87 Range Rover.
I think that's all. I think I counted 18.
I think we hit a, okay. And then there's a few other odds and ends, but
sure, parts and pieces and things. And
there's plenty of parts and pieces,
right.
But there's a couple of Jaguars. There's an Aston Martin. There's a few other odds and ends.
What Jags do you have?
So, a thorough glutton for punishment.
Absolutely. I never said we were smart. No, there's an E-Type. There's my wife loves her 85 XJS. There's also her 2000 XK8 that she's also very, very fond of.
Those are nice.
Yeah.
Those look nice.
I had an XK8. I love that car.
They are really great little cars. And then there's the Aston's DB7.
Any non-British?
Well, there's a couple of Subarus we use for actually running around. And
Of course.
Well, I commute a fair distance. So I tend to put about 35,000 miles a year on a car, not counting pleasure driving. That's just regular commuting driving. So it's just easier to do that on a Subaru than beat up a $60,000 or $80,000 Land Rover, killing it in miles, which I have done.
Looking at your fleet here, there is one notable missing model. There's no Freelander, sir. Sir.
No, I've never actually had a Freelander.
Not that he will admit to.
Well, there's, like I said, there's just Dixon's secret collection of Freelanders he doesn't want anyone to know about. But,
Dixon.
Not supposed to talk about that. No.
Oops.
Now we know who Mr. Freelander is, that he always talks about, the secret guy who keeps track.
I'm going to be controversial here. I've driven Freelanders in the UK numerous times, especially the Freelander 2 or LR2 as they were here, and they're actually nice little vehicles. I really had no complaints about them.
That's my entry into Land Rover was the Freelander 1 here in the U.S. 2002.
Okay,
and so I'm a big fan. They were problematic vehicles certainly, but I was a big fan. 4 windshields and 5 rear main seals later,
right.
It was time to move on.
No, they've had their problems, but so have most Land Rover products have had their problems. I had a diesel Range Rover Sport for a while, one of the first one delivered in North America.
Yeah.
And it went in 9 or 12 times for the DEF system failing. I loved the truck, other than drive for a month and all of a sudden it would throw the incorrect DEF fluid message, no restarts, 200 miles. And it's just, I can't count on this thing. The last time it did it, we'd gone up to Winter Romp in Maine and we're coming back from there. And 400 miles from the house, it says no restarts and 250 miles. It's like, well, great. Now what do I do?
Was that the TDV6 in that?
Yeah. Because I mentioned that I drive a fair amount of miles, we had the Land Rover engineers baffled because we were having all these problems. And subsequently, lots of people have had these problems. I found out we were just because of the miles, we were getting there before everybody else.
Did they ever figure out what the problem was? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge. They never solved it on ours. And kudos to our dealer who we've been dealing with for years. Even after we'd exceeded the warranty, when it did this the final time at 100 and something thousand miles, they arranged and swapped me into a D5 diesel that they weren't having these problems with without it costing me anything. So they took it on themselves to correct the problem.
Was it probably software?
I think it was a combination of software and some of the components.
So let's look back over your fleet here. And a couple things that I would like to pull out. Others may have other ones they want to talk about, but let's talk about the Pink Panther. Not many people, have seen one in person. I saw one at Gaydon Museum several years ago, but tell us a little more about it. How'd you acquire it and any details about it?
Well, short nutshell history of the Pink Panther is the British SAS, their special forces, had been using modified Land Rovers since they came out with modified Land Rovers.
SAS is Special Air Service, by the way.
Correct. But they'd always field modified their vehicles. And finally, after years of doing that, they went back to Land Rover and said, okay, here's a list of all the mods that we want on a Land Rover. And they gave that to Land Rover. And so Land Rover sat down and built 72 109-inch trucks to these specs. And for the final modifications, they actually sent them off to Marshalls of Cambridge to do the final customizations. Marshalls of Cambridge, of course, doing an awful lot of these special mods for Land Rovers, ambulance bodies, et cetera, et cetera. And so they built 72 of these long-range desert patrol vehicles. And that was their real original intent. As of today, a lot of the owners all know each other because there are so few of them. We think there's about 25 still in existence
around the world.
Around the world. There's 4 in North America that I'm aware of. 2 of which are, I won't say underground, but one is we're not actually sure where it is. One is out in the Midwest with a collector who prefers to, just sort of keep to himself. And there's mine, which is the only one that actually makes its way out to shows where I can. And then there's another one. There's a fella, it's in New York State. I won't disclose where because he also doesn't advertise that, but I do know him and I know where the truck is. So, but mine is the only one here that regularly goes out.
You're the only one that will publicly admit to having one then.
Yep. And I've taken it up to British Invasion and I've taken it out to militaries and shows and stuff. In fact, it's kind of funny when you go to a standard military show where you've got a sea of, 100 green trucks. And then here rolls this pink thing.
And the reason that it's pink is because...
Well, depending on it, they weren't all pink. It really depended on where they had them deployed. But the pink started with the desert patrol vehicles, specifically the ones that were deployed in the Arabian Peninsula, which is where this one spent 12 years of its service life. In Oman. It was there through the entire Dhofar rebellion through the early 70s. But in any case, the pink color really does, and especially in the Arabian sands, dusk and at dawn, it really does start to blend in with the background.
So it's camouflage.
Exactly. And these things were meant for reconnaissance, very quick raid. If you look at them, the crew is completely exposed. There is no protection whatsoever. These were not meant for
no armor
combat vehicles. They were reconnaissance. They were quick strikes and get out of there. And mostly what they would do is they would go park them in the base of a what they call a wadi, a valley, and they were equipped with radio aerials and antennas. And they put up the big aerial, and they have spools of wire they carried on the back, 2-kilometer spools of wire. And so they take the radio set up to the top of the hill, leaving the truck down in the bottom, and then they would do their observations, call it an airstrike, do whatever it is they were doing. So that was their real purpose.
Are they all diesel?
No, these were all 2.25 petrols.
Oh, really? Oh, I just assumed they would have been diesel. Okay.
So much for the rapid strike, Asper.
Well, picture a 109 heavy-duty drivetrain loaded with 110 gallons of fuel, 3 troopers, ammunition, machine guns. You're probably looking at a 7,500 pound vehicle and a whopping 2.25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think your 1.6 Series 1 would outrun it.
They aren't fast off the line. Kudos to the little 2 1/4s. It would move it. Wasn't fast about it, but it would move it.
Part of the advantage of not being seen.
Yeah.
Do you have replica weapons on board?
Yeah, we used. I used modified airsoft ones to.
Right.
Nobody makes copies of the actual ones that were used. So, but the old American M240 is basically the same thing, just modified for US. So I remodified it to look like the British version. Mine was one of the last ones released from the MOD. It didn't get released till 85, 86. I've got it here on the paperwork somewhere. So I've got it set up as that last period. So it's got slightly newer. It got field modified for the newer Klansman radios. So ours is a little unusual from some of the other survivors that are out there. And it's actually almost a surprise that it survived. Originally, you can see it on the paperwork. It was going to be disposed of in Oman, which is where it was at the time. And at the last minute, somebody crossed that out and shipped it back to the UK. And then it wound up in a lot of trucks that got auctioned off. I think Craddock bought, it was a lot of 6 or 7 trucks. It was the last of the Pink Panthers that were released. I think Craddock bought the lot. Then Phil Bashel at Dunsfold bought it, 3 or 4 of them from him. And it sat at Phil's till a friend of mine bought it from Phil. And then it wound up over here, and Jim kept it for years and years and years. Mostly it spent its time in a storage bin. And then when he finally decided it was time to move it on, he called me up and said, look, I'm finally going to sell the Pinky. Do you want it? So he came to me first and was like, yeah, okay, why not?
It's in your collection.
It's in the collection.
That is the advantage of being known as a guy who will take in wayward Land Rovers.
Well, it's an advantage, and sometimes it's a little bit of a curse, but you know.
So it served in the Omani military, or was it British military?
There was the Dhofar Rebellion, where the UK unofficially sent advisors in to assist the Omani army with the insurgency that was happening. It was part of that whole early 70s. All of around the world, you had the communist insurgencies happening. And so the British were unofficially, they were there as advisors. The BAT teams, they called them, the training teams. They were officially there to train the Omani army. But it was the SAS doing the training. And that's where the sort of famous SAS incident of the Battle of Mirbat happened. I don't know if you want to go into too many details on things like that, but, you know, it was a squad of 10 SAS troops got ambushed. They had a small base, and it was just a single squad. Like I said, it was about 10 troops, or 8 or 10 troops who were in Mirbat, and an insurgency force, the numbers vary, but they think it was about 200, assaulted them. And these 8 SAS troopers not only held them off, inflicted heavy losses on the insurgents. It wasn't until a second squad of SAS showed up. There was a weather issue, so they couldn't call in air support. The RAF couldn't send the air support teams in till the very end. But a second squad of SAS showed up, and when that happened, the insurgents basically said, "We're out of here." If we had this much trouble with 8, a fresh second squad coming in, they basically turned tail and ran.
So it served all its. So this Pink Panther served all its life then in that Omani
it served
army.
The bulk of its life in Oman. In '76, they sent it back to the UK, went into storage, as typically happened with the UK MOD vehicles.
Okay.
It got pulled out of storage in the early '80s and went to the 2nd Gurkha Rifles briefly. We have no idea what the Gurkhas did with it, but they had it for a few months, and then it got returned to storage. And then it got sent back to Oman in the beginning of the 80s, spent another 6 years in Oman. Again, we don't know what it was doing. Most of what the SAS did, there isn't a lot of stories about what was happening and what they were being used for.
Yeah, right. Don't ask, don't tell.
But it was in Oman at the time when they started shifting over to the Klansman radios. So you can see where this one was field fit for Klansman radios. Friends of mine have some of the trucks that were officially fit by the MOD with their, full mounting racks, whatever. This just had stuff screwed to it. Just, throw the radios in, screw it in place. That's good.
Is the tire coming out of the grill, the breakfast? Is that
yes.
Okay? So that iconic image is still the case, and they did that.
That's legit.
And they did that. What, basically for visibility out the front windscreen?
Well, it does make it easier. And they also found, and I would not have expected this because to my mind, it looks like it's blocking the radiator.
Right.
But what it actually does, apparently, is it winds up directing the air up and over and actually forces a little better airflow through the radiator.
Interesting. So the airflow just helps with airflow then.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that was not planned. It was an unintended consequence.
Does it do anything?
Happy consequence.
Does it do anything to help limit the ingestion of sand?
I don't know for sure. It's certainly not impossible. But the only thing I did hear from some folks was that it actually seemed to help with keeping the engines cooler.
Well, it makes some sense if they've done those studies of airflow in a pickup
Correct.
truck,
Yep.
and you see how the wind rolls in the back of the bed. And they say you should keep the gate up. Really, it's better than putting the gate down on the beds the way the wind flows. So I can see that coming up over the tire and then directed right into the radiator.
And apparently that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. It may have something to do also with separating the air and taking the layer that's further off the ground, which is cooler than the layer that's right next to the hot sand.
Very possible. Absolutely. And there should theoretically be no sand in that air because it's not been kicked up yet, unless you're behind another vehicle that's kicking up sand. What do you have a favorite of that you prefer to drive if you can?
Do I have a favorite?
Is that like asking your favorite children?
Yeah, something like that. It probably ebbs and flows. There's times that I'll spend more time driving. Like, recently I've been running the Series 3 around more than some of the others, partly because it's parked right next to the garage door, and it's just the quickest and easiest. I'll grab the key and hop in it. No, the 86 Series 1, I drive a fair amount. That one's not for purists. It's a bit of a resto mod. It's got a 200 TDI in it, and so it does a little better job of keeping up with modern traffic. It's got disc brakes on the front, to Series 3 transmission, so galvanized chassis, and it's got a few other adjustments that make it just a little easier to deal with in modern traffic. The 107 Station Wagon, which I found out inadvertently has a little bit of an international following. Oh. It's sometimes referred to as Huxley. You may have seen pictures of the big gray 107. And that's also not a truck for purists. It's got a Mazda 3.5 liter turbo diesel in it, a LT77 transmission, 1-ton axles, and that's the work truck around the property. I've got 23 acres here, and it's the one that does most of the work. It's running 35-inch tires, and
because it can.
Because it can, yeah. That truck it's got full lockers. It's mostly unstoppable. So that's the one. I think we mentioned, well, not in this podcast, but we do have 23 acres of woods here that we run small Rover events and things on. So it's the truck that's helped build most of the trails and do the logging maintenance and things that I have to do. There are properties under woodland management. So it's the work truck. But I found out inadvertently, we were over in the UK for the Bicester Heritage Festival. It was the big Pink Panther gathering. And it wasn't financially feasible to send ours over. Plus all the things I would have had to strip out with the shifting laws because of a lot of the equipment on mine, because it was shipped out of the UK before some of the regulations came in. I was going to have to pull the smoke dischargers and everything else off of it, or drill large holes in them, or do other things to it. So I decided against shipping the Pinky over to the UK for the show. We just brought a big picture of it with us and put it on an easel next to the other trucks. Friends of mine have multiples over there. So it's like, oh, no, you take one of ours. Okay, fine. We'll just fly over, do the show. But in any case, we were over there for the Bicester show, and I actually had people coming up to me and saying, oh, you're Bill Cooper. I'm like, yes. How do you know who I am? You've got the big gray 107 we see on Instagram and on Facebook. So apparently the truck is somewhat famous.
You have two Heritage Defenders, the 84, that's a stage 1, right?
No, 84 was the second year of the actual 110.
Okay.
So it's the full coil sprung 110. 83 was the first year. 84, I had an 83. I sold that one, but this is an 84. We've sort of gone through it and rebuilt it. It's still on its original chassis, but we use that one for driving around. And
you have a modern Defender?
Have a modern Defender. We've got the 97 Station Wagon, which is that last year of the NAS trucks, which I used to use for more off-roading until their values started climbing. I thought maybe I ought to be a little nicer to this truck. I started seeing them selling for $70,000, $80,000. It's like, oh, maybe I should be a little nicer to it. And then we do have a 2020 Defender 110, which I have to say is actually one of the nicest things Land Rover's put out in years. I've got no complaints.
Does Dixon give you the business for having a plushie?
Oh, of course. I would expect no less.
What do you think of the modern plushies?
I'm one of the weirdos who I love my old series trucks. I love the older ones, but I also appreciate the new ones for what they are and what they can do. And the fact that I can hop in that and go take an 8-hour drive and hop out still totally relaxed and comfortable. And I can do it in a reasonable amount of time at 70 miles an hour, towing a trailer and no qualms whatsoever, and get out and I don't have frostbite. My feet are dry, all those modern conveniences.
You still have hearing.
Yeah,
Oh, dear.
Exactly.
Comfort over nostalgia.
I noticed, Dixon, that when you travel back and forth, it's in an Audi, not in a.
Why not a Freelander? Sounds like if he has all these Freelanders, he should be.
Because he wants to get back home again.
That's true. That's true.
But no, I will never part with my series trucks. I appreciate all of them for what they are.
Right.
I recognize what a modern Land Rover can do and its comforts and its reality of, we touched on it with doing the series run, the modern world we're in. It's just on a day-to-day basis, if you're having to use highways and whatever, series trucks really aren't practical for that.
You have a 67 2B forward control. How did is that running? And what's
Yep.
Do you use it for anything? Have you converted it for camping, for example?
No, it's still got its utility bed on it. I picked it up from a friend of mine. Ironically, the same guy who owned the Pink Panther. He hadn't been using this one much. It had been actually parked in a sort of muddy field for quite some time, suffering badly from rust. The chassis was pretty well shot at that point. But it's fully running. It's on the road. It's not fast. It makes the Series 1 look fast. It really does top out at about 40, 45. It has to do with the gearbox and everything that they put in those. It was those helical gear, 1 ton. It was meant to move a heavy load. So there is no top end. It just not existent. A good brisk walking pace is probably faster. But that load bed, was right around 11-foot bed on there. So it's awesome. The guys at the local lumber yard love it when I pull in there just throw whole sheets of plywood in the back and 2x4s, whatever, just toss them in. They're fine.
What engine's in the FC?
When they built them, you had a choice of a 2.25 petrol, 2.25 diesel, and they wound up putting the 6-cylinder in there. Oh. When I got this one, it had the 2.25 diesel in it, which, because with a lot of things that had the 2.25 diesel, especially the larger, heavier vehicles, people tended to have to thrash them in order to try and make them move. This 2.25 was on its last legs. In fact, it seized on me not too long after I'd gotten it. The 2.25 just said, I'm done, and locked up solid. A friend of mine had a 2.5 diesel sitting behind the shed. It was like, you know what? That's a bolt-in. I'll take it. So we swapped that in, and that's what it's still running on. So I did pick up an extra probably 2.5 miles per hour by doing the engine swap.
So, Bill, you have one, and you mentioned earlier, you have one Series 3 in your collection. Why is that? Why only one Series 3?
Well, it's, as you may have noticed, there's a tendency towards Series 1s and Series 2As. And I was jokingly talking with somebody and said, yeah, we should get a Series 3 just as a token Series 3 to round out the collection. And of course, the person I was joking with and chatting with, Trevor Griffiths, who's got a Rover shop out in PA, said, I got a Series 3 I was thinking of moving on, and it's a truck I knew. It's referred to as Solomon's Island because it had belonged to the Solomon's Island Yacht Club for many years, and it still has the logo on the writing on the sides of it.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a story around that too. But in any case, this truck had floated around the Rovers Club for many years. So it's like, yeah, why not? So I bought it and actually found out it's a nice little truck and I enjoy driving it. But as you get into the Series 3s and they start adding more wiring and extra things, it's like, it's not quite as straightforward as a 2A or a Series 1 as far as, taking care of everything. And electrical issues can be a little more fiddly and trying to get to stuff behind the dash. It's just a lot more work. So
it went from 2 fuses to 4. It's twice the complexity.
That's absolutely. And I have enough trouble with 1 fuse. So, just tie all the wires together. It should work.
Let alone from going from positive earth to negative earth.
There are times when, you have to deal with a jump pack or whatever. I have to stop and think for a moment. Okay, wait, which truck am I on? Yes. Okay. This goes this way. This goes that way. When we picked up Solomon's from Trevor, we were throwing it on the trailer and we're driving across PA, and I pulled into a truck stop on 78. You pull into the trailer area where the tractor trailers are. And as we were getting back in to the truck, a tractor trailer pulled in next to us. And the driver gets out and he starts looking at the truck on the trailer. And I was waiting for the usual questions of A, is it a real Land Rover? Or B, what is it? And he just starts laughing. And he comes up to my window and he starts pointing to the truck. He says, I used to drive that truck. I used to run boats in and out of Solomon's Island all the time. I used to drive that truck around.
Wow.
So he was gassed to see it and that it was still running around. But on a rest stop on Route 78 in the middle of, or many years later, to just run into the guy that used to drive the truck, it was pretty funny.
Neat little part of the story there. Did it put boats in and out of the water then? Is that what it did?
I don't know all the uses they put it to. I think it was doing that. I think it was moving boats around, as part of this yacht sales place. I think they were, ferrying customers to different things. But it spent several years there. It started life as poppy red, I think is the color, or whatever the series red color was, which there weren't that many of. And then when Solomon's Island got it, they painted it the beige, put their logos, writing on the doors and whatnot. And then it made its way into the member of the Rovers Club for PA in New Jersey, bought it. And then it's floated. It's had several owners within the club over the years. And I think at this point, it sort of found its semi-forever home. And there's sort of an unwritten agreement that if I ever do decide to move it on, the Rovers Club members get first choice. Try and sort of keep it in the club. It's sort of become a club vehicle.
Oh, that's nice. It's a good way to do that.
But it's what you might call a survivor truck. It's never been restored, but I keep it safe to drive. So there's probably more patching on the chassis than chassis, but it's one of those trucks.
Gotcha. So you're a metal dash guy.
Yeah, for the most part.
Another one I wanted to ask about was you have a 91 Disco that's a TDI. Is that an original TDI?
It is an original TDI. It's one of the early, they sometimes even call them, it's part of what they consider the Project J. So it's that first iteration of the D1s.
Automatic or stick?
It's a stick, 5-speed stick.
It's also unique.
There's only 2 or 3 that I'm aware of, 3-door Discoveries here in North America. There's a few more around the world, but
3-door. Okay.
Yeah, it's a 3-door.
Okay.
Well, it predates the North America Discovery, so it would have been imported. Correct.
So it's actually a nice little truck to drive around. And that one I sort of keep basically stock because it is sort of an unusual, early 3-door Disco. It's a 91.
I like the minimal dash in those things.
Yeah, it's a different dash. It's a different interior. So, of course, later stuff doesn't fit it. And trying to find bits for this one are a little trickier than they are for the later 94 and later, what they call the facelifted D1s. So it's a little trickier finding parts for it, but I do have a fair number of interior, and it does have the rather rare, it's got they call it the Discovery, the little purse that came in this. So it's a soft bag that sat in the place of the center console. And those are apparently fairly rare.
Well, I'm sorry, tell us more. It's a soft-sided center console?
There's a center console. Instead of having the little cubby box, with that little top on it, there was an open flat area. And there was this removable bag. I don't have it here to hold up for you, but there was a soft little bag that you could carry with you. And it was meant to go there. And apparently it was a relatively rare option.
Much like the fitted luggage in your snooty Italian sports
That was the
cars.
basic idea. So we do have that for it.
Interesting. I had never heard of that before. Okay.
And it's got the very rare side trim on it. I wondered why this one looked different from all the other 90, 91 Discoveries I'd seen pictures of. And apparently there was a little 300-pound option for a D1, the special side trim pieces. And sure enough, that's what's on this.
Have you had that its entire life, or how did you obtain that?
No. I picked it up a few years ago. Somebody had imported it. It wound up with a fella I know who decided he was going to move it on. So I thought, that's kind of unusual, unique. And it's got one of the smoothest shifting LT77 and LT230 transfer cases I have ever experienced. It just glides in and out of high range, low range lock with no effort whatsoever. And it was like, all right, I can't let this go. So that in itself is unusual.
Yes. So what do you do with your trucks besides, you sounds like you do you go to events? Do you off-road? I mean, you certainly use a few of them around your property there and then commute. I'm curious if you attend events or are you
Yeah, we try to attend events. My work schedule doesn't always allow too many events. So, we go up to Winter Romp each year. We hold some events here at our property, the Rover Club picnic in July. We do that every year. That one we've had upwards of 65, 70 trucks at, which starts to get a little crowded on 23 acres. The trails get a little busy. Ironically, people have been bugging me for years to go to Mar. Last year was the first time we'd ever actually made it to Mar. I just always seem to have something that gets in the way. Even 35 years of Rover ownership, something just always seemed to get in the way. But yeah, we try to get out to go to shows or meets or gatherings and bring something out.
You like to show off the collection?
It's not so much about me. I like to bring the unusual stuff out so folks can see it, like the Pink Panther. Most people don't get to see them in the flesh, so we try to bring it out so
that's very
people
cool.
Can see it. Sure, get up, sit in it, touch it.
I think the Pink Panther would be a good addition to any show. For instance, in particular, the show in Pittsburgh at the Vintage Grand Prix.
You knew we were going to invite you.
We can certainly talk about it. I had somebody from was it down south Florida from the club down there. They do the Sand
Rover rally,
Sand Rover event. Reached out about wanting to have a Pink Panther at the Sand Rover event. It's like, well, they're doing it at the same time. We're going to be driving cross country, so I can't do it this year. But I said, I'm very open to talk about next year. Maybe we'll bring the Pinky down.
You could show up in Series 1 at that rate, then, if it's the same time as your trip.
Yeah, I think the timing wasn't going to work out for this one. Originally, when I was looking at it, I was trying to see if, there are a couple of the Southern events I wanted to see if I could figure out, but none of the timing worked.
Have you attended anything on the West Coast?
No, never attended a Rover event on the West Coast. Okay. So we want to make a point of that. Ironically, I've done Rover events in the UK, but not here on the West Coast.
As you said, there's only so much time.
There's only so much time. And, in some ways, sometimes it's easier, being in the New York, New Jersey area. It could be easier to get over to the UK for something than it can be to get out to California. For years, I've wanted to take one of the Series 1s out to like Colorado and whatever, run the mountain passes and whatnot. But you have to allow, 3-day travel just to get there. Because I don't want to go out there and rent something. I want to take one of mine. So I've got to allow, it suddenly becomes, instead of 3 days driving around Colorado, it's now a week and a half minimum. And if I'm going to take that, well, now I want it to be a 3-week minimum because I want to go do other things while we're out.
Do your family, have they gotten involved, taking the bite of the Land Rover apple with you?
My wife certainly tries to do most of these trips with me. She's game. I knew she was not smart when I first met her. We had the 66 2A. That was my only car. So on our very first time together, it was like, okay, I'll pick you up. Here, it was wintertime. Here's a blanket. You're going to want to put this over your legs. And if it rains, there's a garbage bag right there to put up. And she's still here. So, I knew she was up for it. So she's got her LR4 that she absolutely loves, and she refuses to get rid of it. She's got 160,000 miles on it, but that is her favorite by far. And I promised her until the repair and maintenance bills cost more than payments on a new one, I have no issue with keeping it because it has been a great vehicle. And then my daughter, not quite so much, but she does have that 2002 D2. That's sort of the one she tends to go grab and go take places and do things.
So you had Oxford, which is our story truck, and it was in. Can you tell us about that? Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic, of course, so you could only have it.
It was right as the lockdown hit. In fact, they were just locking things down as I was picking it up from up in Boston. David Short and the Rover Club of Virginia had put together that whole trip. And Oxford had come up to Winter Romp. That was the first place I actually saw Oxford and chatted with David. And we discussed, through the Rovers Club, using Rovers Club as the sponsor, bringing it down and trying to do some events in and around New York, get it to places, because we do have JLR headquarters here in Jersey. Wanted to get Oxford into New York, get a couple of pictures in Times Square, et cetera, et cetera. So we made the arrangement. I was going to hold on to Oxford for, about a week and a half was the original plan. Went up to Boston where it just done the event there.
The event with the coolest name ever. One if by land, two if I sea, none if by Lucas.
Right. There you go. Went up to pick up Oxford. And because of anyone who's been in Boston, driving trailers and whatnot and trying to park and deal with downtown Boston, it's just not practical. So we had parked at a little hotel just outside town and thought, all right, you know what? We'll just get a lift into town, pick up Oxford, drive it back to the hotel. Did that just as the world was locking down and they were shutting everything, canceling everything. You know, this was probably one of the last gathering type thing. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Get home while you can.
You know, we were starting to wonder. But in any case, did take Oxford as we came down. We actually stopped in as many places. We stopped in 3 different places named Oxford. So we could do some photos of Oxford in front of the town of Oxford in Massachusetts, in Connecticut. There's an Oxford, New Jersey, not far from here. So we stopped in all of those places with Oxford to do a few photos and then brought it back here to the house. But then sadly, all the plans and events, and they were locking down New York City. If you didn't have a reason to be in New York, the police were ticketing and giving you grief. So it's like, all right, that put paid to trying to go to Times Square and all the events.
Although fortunately, it would have been nice because Times Square would have been empty and it would have been a great opportunity to get a photo.
Absolutely.
Good and the bad.
That sort of put paid to that. As I was driving out of Boston, running down the 90 Turnpike there, I was noticing that Oxford was in need of some servicing. 90 is a 3-lane highway. He needed all of them because there was no such thing as staying in a lane. Now, I got 35 years of series driving experience. I know when a series truck is not steering straight. Oxford was not steering straight. The engine was not happy. There was just a lot of things that were not where they should be. I was getting it to, just needed to get it to the trailer. We're good. We did manage to do a couple of things, even in the lockdown. What I did was, we've got a large carport behind the house. I threw Oxford in the carport and I let people from the Jersey area and PA area come on over, come take a look. We'll keep our distance. I'll stand to the side. You can go under the carport, go take a look, visit Oxford, do what you want to do, keeping everybody away. So we did have, a half dozen people come through to at least get to see Oxford because they weren't able to get to any of the other locations. And then, like I said, while it was here, I was noticing that Oxford, we tried to do a run down the Old Mine Road, which is one of the oldest roads in North America. Sections of it are still dirt here in Jersey. So we took Oxford over there and the engine was just sort of getting worse and worse. And I mentioned to David that, if it were my truck, the head needs to come off. Something's not happy with this engine. And as it turned out, Dixon, at that point, when it was really getting bad, I'd reached out to Ben and I brought it down to Ben's so that we could do a quick ride with me and tell me what you think. And at that point, the head gasket went. While we were running around the farm there, it blew. Or it finally blew. It was already blowing.
Well, there's your answer.
And that finalized that. So Ben had the misfortune of, we said, what, we're just going to leave it here.
You helped to get it back on the road then? And
no, that was actually all Ben's work.
Okay.
I give full kudos to Ben Smith for, getting Oxford back running. That was all his work.
Assume you got a thrill from driving it, knowing its history in Providence.
Oh, well, yeah. The first drive up with it was actually up in Maine. Bruce Oxford was having its share of problems up in Winter Rock.
When did Oxford not have its share of problems?
And it's still having them, from what I understand.
When it left the factory, I think is the answer to that question.
Well, I had redone the fuel system while it was sitting in Bruce's garage up at Winter Rock because it was coughing and burbling and couldn't get fuel pressure. And it turned out the fuel switchover switch, somebody at somewhere along the line had used the packing nut to attach it to the bulkhead. So it was not screwed in tightly. So it was sucking air through the thing. So I just, real quick patch, ran rubber fuel line, bypassed the line and got the fuel working. And all of a sudden it was starting to run. And so Bruce handed me the keys and said, here, go take it for a test drive. And so this was just like, oh, cool. Okay. So that was my first experience driving Oxford, was up through Winter Romp and running out to the power lines and back. And I was talking before about, Oxford and not being quite as impressive as some of the others, but it's still a huge piece of Rover history. And so to be able to say, okay, sit behind the wheel and go take it for a ride, was still a high point because of the history that truck does have.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for the story behind it, it would just be another old truck, and it wouldn't be
Absolutely.
big
Absolutely.
If it doesn't have that history, I think folks would have put it out to pasture and parted it out long
It
ago.
would never have come back from St. Helena.
No,
it would have just continued to rot into the ground where it was.
Correct.
Inadvertently, we wound up having Oxford for about a month because all the events that Oxford was supposed to go to got canceled. And David was just like, you know what, just keep it there for now till we figure out what to do.
And it was probably in good hands at that point with the right people.
Well, it was certainly safe. It was locked in a garage. It was at least getting its fluids and a few other minor things addressed.
Plenty of
it wasn't my
worse
truck,
places to abandon it.
Yeah, I mean, it was at least safe where it was.
Bill, it's been a very enjoyable conversation learning about your fleet and your experience with Land Rover. I want to thank you very kindly for coming on and talking about us.
Not a problem. Hopefully too many people didn't fall asleep. So,
we'll find out in a couple months after this gets out.
There you go.
And we get some feedback. And folks can follow Bill on his Barbara Toy tribute run across North America. He'll set up by the time this comes out, I think, Bill, you'll have a Facebook page.
I was going to set it up this weekend, so I'll get you the link so you can include it in here and where people can find it.
Right, and you can follow that, and also we'll have a link to your Instagram page where you can also follow your adventures in Land Roverdom.
Yep.
Bill, thanks very kindly. I hope we get to see you out there.
My pleasure.
We hope you enjoy show number 108. Thank you to Morgan and Harold for helping out on today's podcast. Gentlemen, thank you.
Yeah, no sweat.
Yeah, thank you.
We should also thank Jasper for joining the podcast.
Yeah, he poked his head in once during the podcast into my office. So.
I don't think we heard anything, so that
an unobtrusive contribution.
Yes.
And speaking of not hearing from anybody, we didn't have Dixon. Dixon didn't show up mid-show. But we had recorded and talked to Bill Cooper, obviously previously to recording the news segment, and thankfully Dixon was able to join us for that. And which brings me to thanks to Bill Cooper for coming on and being our guest this month. The things he talked about, including the Barbara Toy tribute run. He now has that Facebook page up and running. And of course, I'll have a link to it in the show notes. And also thanks to the One True Packs for his continued production support, making us sound better and better, I hope. And in honor of Land Rover's 75th anniversary, you're invited to bring your Land Rover, specifically Series and Defender owners, to the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix in 2023. That's July. That's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I should probably add that too if you didn't know that already. You have 15 months to get your Rover ready. Visit our website, Centresteer.com, to listen to previous shows and for show notes, which have links to the stories we discussed in today's podcast. If you're listening to the podcast on our website, you can download a podcast app, subscribe so you have the podcast delivered automatically. My personal favorite podcast app is Overcast, and they just did a nice update to it. That's my personal recommendation on a podcast app if you don't currently have one. We do post a new podcast at the end of every month. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, and voicemail. I did have somebody leave us a voicemail a bit ago, and I'm not sure. It kind of got garbled. I'm not sure where they were from. I think they had a British accent, best I could tell. So whoever that was, please try again. Leave a contact info. And you can directly support the show at patreon.com/Centresteer. You can buy us a t-shirt, a sticker, or even buy us some brown water. Click on store on the menu of our webpage for all the details. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover. Click on voicemail on the website. Let us know. Send us an email. Until next time, I ask you to share the show with one other Land Rover enthusiast.
Thanks for listening. You may now resume your important things.
There's just Dixon's secret collection of Freelanders he doesn't want anyone to know about.